Hey there friends, Dave Paulides, Canadian Missing Project, copyrighted edition for our video channel. Thanks for being here. You are greatly appreciated, and I respect you for your opinions, and which is why I appreciate all the comments on the videos. Some of you have written lately and said, hey, do you really read all those, Dave? Well, if you read the comments, you know I'm the one that's responding to many of them. And I try to read them all. Yes, I do. And it's quite a job. It takes a lot of time. I have a lot of late nights. Some people on the cruise lately said, hey, Dave, you work a lot? That is hilarious, because you need to ask Angie that. That's her number one complaint for Dave. He works way too hard, 70, 80 hours a week, and that's the truth. A couple of things. I had two comments lately sent at me. It's like a shotgun blast over my shoulder. People said, hey Dave, get away from the patriotism and stay away from being patriotic, otherwise you're going to lose people. Hey, don't care. You don't like it? Leave. I really don't care. If you don't believe the United States is the best country in the world, leave. And this is the end of the line, folks. This is where am I going to go from here? This is the country I love. This is the only country in the world with a Bill of Rights. The only country in the world that has our Constitution. And because of that, I feel very grateful. And I love our country. And I am patriotic. But enough about that. This is a missing persons segment. And we are going to talk about two missing persons cases. And I greatly loved my trip to Alaska. And the trip made me realize a couple things. One thing was that I forgot how beautiful Alaska is. And it's embarrassing. And the amount of area you can see on a trip to Alaska is overwhelming on a cruise. And one of the videos I took was just 30 minutes cruising right along the shoreline in Alaska. It's worth saying. It's absolutely gorgeous. And in 4K you can really see it. So yeah, in fact Angie and I said we probably need to go back again soon because we had so much fun. So many nice people. A lot of people. So one of the last days we did a town hall meeting in Juneau, and so many people came up and said, Dave, we watch your videos. This is the part that blows me away. Every place I go, at least 50, 60 people come up to me in the middle of nowhere sometimes, say, hey, we watch your videos and, you know, thanks for everything you do. And numbers seem overwhelming sometimes, but it's a reminder how many people from all over the world are watching. And I'm very grateful that anyone even cares to watch. And when we were in Juneau, 3 people came up to me and said, Dave, we have a mental health crisis here, and you're one of the few people that are willing to talk about it. Thank you for bringing it up. Hey, I understand. Suicide rate in Alaska is huge. So I do care, and I will continue to talk about it. Now, one of my jobs, I feel, on this channel is keeping you alive on the trail, whatever that takes. And talking about the latest technology, talking about the best equipment, whatever it is, I'm going to talk about it. And as I've told you before, nobody pays me to talk about their things. I'll just bring them up on my own. If somebody makes a real great product, I'm bringing it up. You don't have to pay me for it. I'll just talk about it. So now, in the last 4 years here in Montana, we've averaged 1 person killed per year by grizzly bear. Not a good statistic. And a variety of things have happened. Hikers, people sleeping in a tent, it's all over the map. But we had a real gruesome one just the other day. Man's alive. I want to read it to you because we're going to learn from it. KSL.com, dateline September 12, 2023. Officials in Montana have closed a portion of the Custer-Gallatin National Forest after a man was mauled by a grizzly bear. The man was identified by family members as 61-year-old Rudy Norlander. According to a GoFundMe account, family members said Norlander owns and operates Alpine Adventures in Big Sky, Montana, and rented out some of his ATVs to other hunters. After hearing that the hunters killed but were unable to find a deer, Norlander joined the hunters to help them search for it. While tracking a deer, Norlander saw one small adult grizzly bear in the area. Then he encountered a much larger bear. Now let me stop right here. Grizzly bears are one of the smartest animals in the woods and one of the most cunning in the woods. In a lot of ways, they're way better of migrating around than we are. And when you think they're gone, they're not gone. Now, when you're hunting, you got to have one eye in front and one eye in back of you all the time. Now, most hunters hunt alone. In Montana, I suggest you hunt in pairs. And I know you can't get as many deer or as many elk, but that area in Big Sky and West Yellowstone, that area between those two cities, has a lot of grizzly bear. Now, when an animal's shot, they're not at 100%. And there's a good chance a bear's going to get it soon. So what happened was, as Norlander rents his snowmobiles out to a couple people, they shoot a deer. They look for it and they don't find it. Well, he's a hunter and he's an outdoorsman and an environmentalist. When you shoot something, you find it. You don't let it go and walk away. You find it. And if it takes you 2 days, you find it. So he went back out and he was going to find it for him. And they were with him. That's where the story goes from here. While tracking a deer, Norlander saw one adult small grizzly. Now, I'm sure he was on super high alert then. Because if they got that deer, the bear cached the deer and may be protecting the prize that it now has. Quote, a 10-foot mega bear appeared out of nowhere. He had bear spray. He had a gun in his hand. The bear, he said, from the moment he saw it to when it was on him was 1 second, said Caitlin Davis, Norlander's daughter. Quote, so he thought, I'll just fight. And that's what he did. So he tried to shoot. His gun misfired. He tried to punch the bear. He punched it in the nose. And then right after the punch to the nose, the bear locked onto his jaw and ripped his jaw off. Norlander also has a huge scratch on his chest, a collapsed lung, and bites to his arms and thighs. Fortunately, very fortunately, Norlander was not alone, and other hunters were able to scare the bear away and call for help. However, since the bears were still in the general area, the first helicopter that arrived had to wait for a second helicopter to assist in keeping bears away. Norlander waited for help for 2 hours until he was able to be picked up and evacuated to Bozeman Health Deaconess Regional Medical Center. One thing we don't have in Montana is a really good emergency medical hospital. The closest one's Salt Lake. Where he had an emergency surgery before being flown to a Utah hospital. So we don't have a level 1 trauma center here in Montana. As we grow, I'm sure we'll get one. But unfortunately, it's probably cost a lot of lives in the meantime. Norlander's in stable condition. Quote, to see the strongest person I know, not okay, it's horrifying. But he's so strong that I think his sheer will push him through this, Davis said. Grizzly bears are protected under the Endangered Species Act within the continuous United States. The Montana Department of Fish and Game said as bear populations continue to increase, people may encounter bears in places they haven't been in decades, creating a greater potential for conflicts. The attack on Norlander happened just months after a woman was fatally mauled by a grizzly on a trail west of Yellowstone National Park in July. Yeah. Now, the legislature in Montana voted overwhelmingly to allow a hunting season on grizzly bears, and based on a tag. So they'd say, well, this year we can kill 20 bears or 50 bears, and they'll issue 50 tags. It's not unlimited hunting. But the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service will not allow the grizzly bear to be hunted yet, which is causing problems on ranches, farms, hunters, hikers, attacks, killings. There comes a point where we have so many grizzly bear that people and grizzly bear, their paths are going to cross, as is now happening. Now, Norlander. He saw a grizzly bear before the attack. He had a gun, but he couldn't get a shot off. He said that he couldn't go for his bear spray because his bear spray was in his backpack. Huge mistake. You never carry your bear spray in your backpack. Bear sprays many times come with a little attachment that fits onto your belt. It should be carried just like a gun. If you got your gun on your right hip, your grizzly spray's on the left hip. Always. Don't play games with this. Now, he did something that I've never heard an experienced hunter do, and that is he fought with the grizzly bear. Now, if it's a black bear, you fight. And black bears don't hang around when they see resistance. Grizzly bears, when they see resistance, they fight harder. Thus, they tore his jaw off. In a grizzly bear attack, you're supposed to feign death. Now, the attack may go on for a few more seconds, maybe even a minute. But the only reason that bear went away is one of the other people in the party shot at it and scared it away. Maybe even hit it, I don't know. But if you're not really close to that bear when they're attacking somebody else, you might shoot the other person. Don't know. But the point is, in Montana, parts of Wyoming, Idaho, Washington, you better be careful when you're out there on the trail. And always carry bear spray. I mean, when Angie and I go out, sometimes we carry a couple canisters each. And why is that? Because grizzly bears are known to come back for more. So you drill a grizzly bear with some bear spray and you see it run off and you think, oh, that's good, let's continue our hike. Turn around, go back to where you came from, because that bear is going to circle back around and watch you and look for an opportunity to come at you again. I'm telling you the truth. You don't play games with grizzly bears. Even if I had a rifle, I wouldn't be playing games, because, as Norlander stated, the bear was on me within a second. That's how fast they are. So, enough for our trail guidance for today, but I want you to take it seriously. Now, since I was just in Alaska, I thought I'd talk to you about a couple of Alaska cases. And yeah, they touch pretty close to my heart because I was in both those cities. First case involves a man named David Loveland, 41 years old. Went missing November 25th, 1988 in a region northeast of Ketchikan. And I was in Ketchikan. So Ketchikan's right here. He lived in a place called Ward Cove right here. And he was going to make a 14-mile hike into Harriet Lake and Lynch Creek. Two beautiful locations. Tons and tons of water in this area. There's now a road that goes to the area. But back in '88 there wasn't. But it's a beautiful place. If you ever get to catch a can, rent a car. Gorgeous. Bring your fishing pole. Bring a gun. And bring your bear spray. So, in July '88, David moved to Ketchikan, and specifically to Ward Cove, about 5 miles north. Loved the outdoors, loved hiking, always wanted to move to Alaska. He already knew a lot about hiking and backpacking, and because of that, he felt pretty comfortable, and he knew what he needed to do when he went into the woods. We planned to hike to Harriet Lake, like I said, and to an area called Lynch Creek. 14 miles one way. And what he had planned is about 7 miles a day. Now, if you're new to hiking, and it's a really steep, rugged area, plan about 4 miles a day. If you're in decent shape, 7 miles is decent. If you're in really good shape, you could probably do 10. But he was going to do 2 miles out, camp, 2 days out, camp, 2 days back. So he's wearing a yellow rain parka, and it was sprinkling off and on, and even snowing a little bit. But that parka gave him great visibility to everybody around him, which is important because if you're ever lost, you want to be found. Now, David wasn't one of those guys that played games. He went equipped for the right incident to appear. Carried a .44 Ruger revolver and extra ammunition. .44 caliber is one of those calibers in a pistol that can put down a bear. There's only 3 that I would count on. .44, 50 caliber, and a 10 millimeter. Now, stop there for a second. A 50 caliber, I actually went with a friend of mine, shot a 50 caliber revolver, Smith & Wesson, 4-inch. I've never said this before, but my hand hurt like heck. The entire palm from just holding the gun, and the kick from that gun is unbelievable. .44 mag, not too bad. 10 millimeter, not bad at all. 10 millimeter though, the one that I carry, 16 rounds. So that bear's gonna have a lot of lead in it when I'm done with it. So, he's carrying a Ruger revolver, carrying a camera and a compass. Smart. A lot of people don't carry a compass. Some people don't know how to use a compass. If you don't know how to use a compass, go to your local sporting goods store and they'll give you a quick class. Everybody carry a compass. He also had an army-style backpack and a sleeping bag. He carried matches. He had multiple cans of Sterno, which is like a thing that burns and gives you heat so you can heat up food. And he took along several bags of soup, powdered soup. Smart. The powdered soup, freeze-dried soup, weighed nothing. Sleeping bag probably weighed a little. But he had the right stuff. He was carrying what I would have been carrying. Well, he didn't come back on the 29th, which was his due back date. And friends called Alaska State Troopers. All over the state of Alaska, the state troopers do the search and rescue. They're very well equipped for it, highly trained, and if I was lost, that's what I'd want looking for me, for sure. So, 4-day hike in and out, 7 miles each day. When he didn't return, his friends called Alaska State Troopers. Search and rescue was headed by a sergeant named John Clayman from the troopers out of Ketchikan. And Clayman knew the area that he went into. He knew that it was very thick, very lush, lots of water. He also knew what David was carrying, and he was fairly certain that he could survive just about anything out there with what he had. So it wasn't an urgent survival situation, but something was wrong. So first thing they did is they put people on the trail that David went out. And for the first couple days, they found nothing. Then on December 3rd, the search and rescue people on the ground found what they believed to be was a campsite. And they found paper containers that would have contained the exact soup that David was carrying. So Clayman said, everybody pull out of the area. Don't go up the trail. Let's leave it. Keep that scent in the region. And they called in 2 of the best canine trained search dogs that the troopers had. And they flew them into the location, dropped them off, and one at a time, they took a canine in to see what it would do. Both times, canines searched around the area, picked up a scent at the site, walked 10 feet, came back, didn't find anything. No scent. Both dogs did the exact same thing. Now, from a law enforcement perspective, that's odd behavior. Because you have an exact site that you know he was at within the last couple days. That scent should have been there. But it wasn't. So they pulled the dogs out. At the same time, they have an Alaska State Trooper helicopter. They have 2 of them, and one of them is at this site for the whole week of the search. And they committed, what they said was 340 hours of ground pounding time, people on the ground. And then they committed 40 hours of helicopter time, 8 hours a day, 5 days straight. Now, just so you understand, because a lot of people don't get this. Helicopter is really expensive to fly. Why is that? It has so many parts that after so many hours have to be replaced, and those parts are super expensive. I have a friend of mine that owns a lodge in the Yukon Territory, and he has flown a helicopter his entire life, just about. Probably the only pilot I would trust my life with. This guy is so good. And he says, Dave, I'm flying in the middle of nowhere in the Yukon. I change those parts on my helicopter when I'm only halfway through the period where they recommend. Like, let's say I can fly with this bolt on the helicopter for 500 hours. I only fly with it for 250, and then I switch them out. Pretty smart. Because if something breaks in the middle of nowhere, you're dead. And he knows it, and he knows the liability he has taking customers in and out. So those helicopters, they're super expensive to fly. Just about the least expensive helicopter is $1,500 an hour to fly. And the Alaska State Troopers committed 40 hours to find a David Loveland. Substantial amount of flight time. Well, after a week, they gave up the search. They didn't find anything. They couldn't figure out what happened. They had no evidence. They knew he was out there because they found the campsite. Nobody else had seen him out there. So state troopers then contacted NABS. NABS is the United States DNA repository for missing people. What has to happen is that the law enforcement agency that has the case has to contact the relative of the victim that's missing. Has to contact them, and then they take DNA from multiple relatives. They put it to the DNA data bank. They pull it out, and that is the match they're looking for when a body is found or bones are found, etc. So David's case is in NABS. A lot of cases I work on missing people are not in NABS. I don't understand why. I don't understand if some agencies are just too lazy or what it is. It's a free service by NABS. Now, They're actual investigators that work for NABS. And a couple of them over the years contacted me and said, Dave, we watch your program, we get new leads on cases that we need to go get DNA. So can you help us out? Of course. There's been probably 12 cases where we've investigated that have given them leads at NABS to find relatives and get that DNA into their data bank. That's a good thing. Now, regarding David, it's been 35 years. Guns do not go away in 35 years. Bright yellow parkas made of rubber don't go away that easily. Belt buckles, leather, the rubber on boots doesn't go away. Now, there are roads that go directly to the area where David disappeared today. And still, after all those years, nothing. This picture of David. David Loveland, 41 years old, missing November 25th, 1988, northeast of Ketchikan, Alaska. He carried all the right equipment. I have no idea what happened to him. It makes no sense. You got weather, you got water, and you got canines. The $1 million question, where is David Loveland? Okay. Case number 2 from Alaska. Now this one, also from a city I was in, and we'll get to it. Man's name was Leslie Wyatt. Leslie was a good young man, a very good young man. 23 years old when he went missing November 20th, 1938. He was from Camden, Tennessee. Initially lived with his mom and dad. His dad was in ill health. Leslie was super smart. He graduated at the age of 17 from high school. And he decided he wanted to get away from Tennessee. And he went to Spokane, Washington, and he enlisted in the Army. And in 3 years, he rose to an Army specialist assigned in Skagway, Alaska. And while he was away and in the Army, he would routinely send his parents money. Well, when I say he's a good person, he's a good person. Well, near the end of his 3rd year of military service, his father got very ill, and the family had a difficult time making ends meet. And they wrote a letter to the Army requesting an early discharge for their son so he can go out and get a job and make money and support the family. The Army released him because they confirmed that his dad was so ill and they had no other way for income. What did Wesley do? Well, he was living at barracks in Skagway. He got a job right away working the mines in Skagway, Alaska. And he sent a majority of his money to his family. When I was researching this story, I thought, how many young people would do that today? Do we have the same moral compass that we did in the 30s, 40s, and 50s? Do we have that same caring instinct in ourselves to help our families? I don't know. I was impressed with this man. While he was in Skagway, he was promised a higher paying job, much higher paying, in Juneau. And he traveled to Juneau, and when he got there, he found out that there was major labor issues that stalled all the hiring in Juneau for a month. Well, Leslie was the kind of guy who didn't give up. He started looking for part-time work to support himself. And he made friends with veterans in the city. And he did find some part-time work. And he did mail a lot of that part-time money back home. Now, this is the part where it gets interesting, if you're bored. He made friends with veterans there. And Wesley heard that some friends of his were stranded in a place called Echo Cove, 40 miles north of Juneau. and they were stranded in their boat with a bad battery. So here's Juneau. Here's Echo Cove. It's about 40 miles from point to point. Now Juneau, you cruise up this channel right here, dock, turn around, go back out. There's a bridge from one part of the city to the island, Douglas Island. But back then, there weren't a whole lot of roads. But now there's a road that goes all the way to Echo Cove. It was quite unclear how far Wesley had to maneuver through the bush to get to his friends. Several articles said 40 miles. Well, it's 40 miles from Juneau there, but to cover 40 miles in a week would have been unbelievable. And he only had a couple days, so it had to have been much shorter time, but they didn't explain it. But he got the needed parts on November 20th, and he set off for the Cove. He was one of these people that always had an attitude for helping people in need. Well, when he didn't arrive at the Cove, word got back, and search parties were commenced by the Department of Interior. And his parents in Tennessee only heard about him being missing when an article in the newspaper came up. That's rough. The U.S. Alaska DOI commissioner named Felix Gray led the search. It started on November 25th. And on the 28th, there was many newspaper articles about Felix not being able to find anything about Wesley. Now, just before Wesley left on his trip, he wrote his mom an article, a letter. I'm going to read you the letter. Dear Mom, I've been in Juneau now for over a month, but don't know how much longer I will stay. I was supposed to go to work soon after I came, but the unions have been in trouble and haven't started yet. They can't seem to agree on anything. Yeah, we're 80 years later. It's still the same way. They just offered me a job in California, but I'm not sure that I will go down there. About your moving somewhere else, I hope you do better, but I wouldn't encourage anybody to move, for it might do you more harm than good. I'm taking your word for being able to make without any more money this winter. I could have worked a little bit longer in Skagway and maybe sent you another $100, but if I get a steady job here, it will be worth much more. And if I go to California, it will be just as good, so I think it's worth taking a chance here. I would have been working a month ago if the unions had stayed out of trouble. Quote, that land in Arkansas sounds cheap, but it may be like that in Canada, and I was looking at it. The taxes were higher than the land. Of course, you can tell more about it there. And if you do what you want to about moving, I'm sure it will be for the best. Just send my mail general delivery to Juneau, Alaska. If I leave before I get it, I will have it forwarded to where I go. Your son, Wesley W. Wyatt. The young man's aunt said that he had sent $200 to his parents this fall. The parents are frantic. Now, I know that may not seem like a lot of money to you, but in 1938, that was a lot of money. That's what he sent. So he was living on a pittance. That's the kind of man Wesley was. Well, the Department of Interior searched for Wesley for a week. And then parents heard that they were going to cancel. And on December 11th, they called the governor of Alaska, Governor Browning, and asked him to send people to search for their son. There was a 2-week search and rescue. They found nothing. Wesley's parents were crushed. Their only son, their main means of living, was gone by trying to do a good deed for somebody else. Now, would this happen in Oklahoma? Would this happen in Kansas? Probably not. When I was on the river fishing in Alaska on this last trip, a couple of times we were hiking with one of the guides. When both groups were gone in the middle of the day, we had about an hour by ourselves, and a guide took us through the bush. And let me see if I can find this real quick. And he took us to a spot that I'd never seen before. He took us to a spot where he said he found an intact bear skeleton. That's what it kind of looks like. Now, he took the skull, but those bones that I had in my hand were huge. He guesstimated that the bear had to have been 8 to 10 feet. It was a brown bear. And apparently it just went into this corner of the bush, laid down and died. Now, the guy had a big gun with him. And we were looking all the time. In all my years of being in the woods, that is the only time I've ever seen an intact bear skull. And this guy even said it's super rare. And he doesn't understand why nothing's come back and tried to do predation on it, chew the bones, etc. He said it was odd. And I thought it was odd. But as we were making our way through this bush, there were times we couldn't see 5 feet into the bush. That's how thick it is. So, if you go off trail, carry a compass, trail guide, electronic, GPS. If you're a hunter, you got to carry that stuff. And my last words, I promise. Hunting season is upon us. You've got a loved one that's a hunter. I know you do. And you got to think about them. All hunters go off trail. I guarantee that by the end of this hunting season, you and I will be talking anywhere between 2 and 5, maybe 10 hunters will die, disappear, or be lost. I guarantee it. And the majority of those would be found quickly if they had a personal locator beacon. And if you're a relative of one of those loved ones, go to Amazon, put in personal locator beacon, and they all work. They're all the same. The only thing you need to look for is there a monthly service fee? The only ones that need a monthly service fee are the ones that will ping every 5 to 10 minutes. And they'll ping and they'll send a text off a satellite showing your current position. So whoever's tracking you back home can see where you're moving through. I don't have that type. I'm too cheap. I just have the type that you activate it, boom, it sends a message. I'm going to need help right now. And it gives you GPS coordinates to the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration. They look at the GPS. They look for the search and rescue in that area. They call them. They'll find you within 10 feet. Probably the best thing you can find and purchase for anyone who's an outdoorsman. I'm just telling you the truth. So, as we get closer to hunting season, I encourage you to go with somebody else. And that somebody else be well equipped and be proficient with a firearm. Because if you're the person that's cleaning out your deer, elk, bear, somebody else better be standing behind you watching what's coming up. So, thank you for being here. If you like the video, thumbs up. And I usually leave a list of videos on the comments section. My first comment, if you're looking at the screen, bottom left are the comments. Read them, please read them. Mine is usually the first comment. I'll leave the videos, the last, say, 10 that are the most watched. So if you missed one, please watch it. Go back and pick it up. And a lot of people have been saying that they've been just putting the videos on in the background and listening to what I'm telling you. Sounds like a good thing to me. So, be kind to your family. Be kind to the people in your community. Do something fun. Do something helpful to someone in need. Maybe go down to your local food bank and donate a little food. We're in tough times. There's a lot of people that could use it. Be safe. Paulides out.